Okay, last little bit of content for today is the do while loop. If you take a look at the screen here, you can see this is the last section of the handout, section 4. So the do while loop is another kind of loop, and the 411 on it is that it's a while loop with the while at the end instead of at the beginning. So what that means is, so here's an example of one right here. So what that means is it starts with the word do, and then the while comes here with a semicolon. So unlike a while loop, which would have the while and the condition here and then the block, it's got the keyword do and then a block and then while, and it actually ends with a semicolon. Again, it's another piece of really standard syntax that you'll see in all kinds of languages. And the big difference here is that it's always going to run the block once. So if you think about your standard while loop over here, here it is. If this test comes out false, then the body will never be executed. But in the do while loop, the test doesn't happen until after the body is executed one time. That's the only difference. So there is nothing, again, you can do with a do while loop that you can't do with a while loop or even with a for loop. But it's a handy thing to do when you know, in situations where you know that you want the loop body to execute at least one time. So one example of that is getting input from the user. If you know that you're getting input and you want to check, so let's say you're getting input, you want a number between 1 and 10, and if the user puts a number outside of that range, then you want to loop back up and get them to enter it again. So you can do that with a while loop, but a do while loop's kind of naturally suited for it in the sense that you know you want to collect at least one input from the user. It's not 0 or more inputs, you want 1 or more. If the first one is good, you don't have to loop. But if the first one is no good, which you can check here, then you got to loop back. This little flowchart here is kind of related to my little piece of terminology here, I tackle. So in a regular loop, you initialize, test, and then act and change inside the loop, change the loop variable, and then loop back. So that's what it looks like here. You can see that you're coming in, you initialize things, and then you test once. If this test comes out false, you never do the loop. You skip to the end. Otherwise, you loop around. In the do while loop, you do them in a different order. So the test comes after the act and the change steps, but before the loop step. So what that looks like down here is it looks like this. You initialize, then you do the loop and change the loop variable. Then you do a test, and if the loop variables, if the test is true, then you go back and do the loop section again. If it's false, you come out here. So it's actually, this is unpronounceable pretty much, but it's iactal. Initialize, act, change the loop variables, test the loop variables, and then loop or don't loop, depending on the outcome of the test. Okay, so the example I'm showing here is what's called a sentinel controlled loop. So let's say you want the user to keep entering things until they, you might say 1 to do a square, 2 to do a circle, 3 to do a rectangle, 4 to quit. So 4 is the sentinel that exits the loop. So here we're doing sentinel values of negative values, 0 or less. So this loop keeps going until it has the user enter a number, multiplies it by 2, and prints it out, until the user enters a negative or 0 integer. So as long as they're entering a positive integer, it keeps going, but the sentinel that stops it, the sentinel that stops it is -1. Okay, let's just take a look at a couple quick examples here. Do while examples 1 here. Let me get rid of this. So there's two things here. There's a while loop and a do while loop that do more or less the same thing. They count up to 10, starting at something that the user inputs. So if I go Control-Shift F10 here to see how they work, enter an integer, let's say 3, the while loop counts from 3 to 10, and the do while loop does the same thing. So I entered a 3, so x is less than 3, so it goes and does the loop, adds 1, and so on, and continues. And then at the very end, it prints out the final number, which will be 10 at that point. This is the do while version. We get I set x equal to 3, which is what I entered. Then I print it out, add 1, and I keep going. And as long as x is still less than 10, I keep going. And at the end, I print out the 10. So under most circumstances, when I entered a 3, they both do the exact same thing. But if I enter something, it's only when I enter something bigger than 3 that you see the difference. So there you go. So the while loop here, I entered an 11. So this is false. 11 is not less than 10. So it skips over all of this stuff and skips to the end where it just prints out 11, the number that I entered. Okay, then I reinitialize x to be 11. And I'm doing a do while, but the difference here is it does this one time. So it prints out 11, adds 1 to x. Now x is 12. 12 is not less than 10, so it exits. It doesn't loop back up. It just exits out and prints out the 12. So it's just a little quick example that shows the difference. And do while examples 2 here has the user, this is the example I was talking about, enter a number from 1 to 10. So if you want to do this with a while loop, you can. You have to get the number first, then check if it's outside of the range. So if it's less than 1 or greater than 10, then we go into the loop and we say invalid range, enter a number from 1 to 10. We put the prompt and we get the number again. Then we loop back, and if it's still outside the range, we do it again and do it again and do it again. Okay, so there's there's a little bit of duplicated code here, but you might opt for this version anyway. I kind of like it. But then there's here's the do while version. So in the do while version, we know that we want to get a number at least once, so we can put that in the loop. We don't have to have these 2 lines don't have to get repeated here. So we lose a little bit of code repetition. So we do that inside the do while loop. The only wrinkle is, and then here's the while, as long as it's outside the range, we go back and do it again. But the wrinkle is if you want to print an error message, which we do here, we have to have a second if statement in here. So we do end up duplicating a little bit of code here and here anyway. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, depending on what you're doing. But it's there, and it's another tool for you to use. Again, it does, like switch and like for, it does not increase the power of the language, where we're thinking of the power of the language in a theoretical sense. So in theoretical computer science, the power of a language is the set of problems that it's able to solve. So this doesn't add new problems that you can solve that you couldn't solve before with a while loop. It just gives you a way to do things in a way that may be more convenient in certain circumstances. So you may never or very rarely write your own do while loop, but you do need to know how they work because, again, other people will use them. And you need to be able to see that. And it's a very common construct throughout a bunch of different languages. Okay, so I do have an exercise for you to try. I hope you guys are at least trying these exercises. Even if you don't get them done, we can take them up in class. Here we are, the do while loop. Even if you don't get them done, and this is, I'm going to drop a little bit of educational psychology on you here. This is a known fact that if you choose to not do the exercises and then just go look at the solution or watch someone else do the solution, you can come away from that thinking, yeah, I get it. But you don't realize that you don't really get it, or you may not really get it as well as you think you do until you try and actually write it yourself. But if you try to write the code yourself, even if you fail, then when you go, then after that failure or success, hopefully you were successful, but even if something goes wrong, even if when something goes wrong, if you then go look at the solution or have somebody explain the solution to you, you get way more out of it because you've struggled with the problem and because you've had to try and engage with it in a deep way on your own. The solution becomes more meaningful and gives you more learning. So that's my pitch to do the exercises, and not just the ones I'm curating for you, but as many as you can. You might have noticed that these lists of exercises are way bigger than I could ever expect you to do in the normal time that we have in class in a week, and that's intentional. I just want to give you more stuff. Like when you're studying for the test, you can try some of these exercises. If you have time later on, try some of these exercises. The more code you write, the better you're going to be. So anyways, I would like you to do exercise 4A, which expands on 3A. So if you remember, 3A was the switch statement where you're drawing one of 3 shapes that the user chooses. So what I want you to do now is add a 4th option to the menu for quitting. So let me show you what that would look like. Exercise 4A here. So again, the solutions are available to you. But here's what it looks like. what kind of shape, square, circle, arc, quit. So let's say circle, and I go through the whole process of entering X and Y, RGB colors, 0, I think that's yellow, radius 100, and then it asks me again, what kind of shape? Okay, now a square, let's put it at 200 X, 100 Y. Let's make it red, make it a dark red, and side length of 50. Okay, and now we're gonna quit. If I go 5, it's gonna, oh dear, that's no good. I don't know what shape I'm drawing now. Oh, okay. Oh dear, I've exposed an error in my solution here. I should have checked for that. It looks like because I haven't gone into the switch statement yet, I collect all this information, which is common to all the shapes, and then I say bad choice. I should fix that. So really, that should work better than that. There should be an if statement that wraps that stuff up. Anyways, what I wanted to show you was quit and show. That's embarrassing. I'm going to fix that. So 4 is the sentinel value that exits the loop. So this whole thing, this whole switch statement and all the other stuff is inside of a big do while loop, and the while clause at the end says, basically keep going while the user didn't choose item 4. So I can draw as many shapes as I want, and then when I quit, it's going to show the screen. That's my idea. So that's building on the last exercise. If you didn't do that exercise and you chose to do something else, then maybe try B instead, or try C. Try one of the other ones, again using do while loops. Okay, so that's it for the do while. I want you to at least have written one do while loop by the time you come to class. So do one of those exercises, or at least play around with the do while loop yourself. And I'm going to give you the assignment in the next video. We're going to go over the requirements for that. So I'll see you in the next video.